Today is Tuesday, 11th of April 2023, and my workshop is basically done. There's still a lot of landscaping to be done around it. As we can see, they pretty much trashed the surrounding area, but that's to be expected. I do have one bid from one landscaper and I'm waiting for a second one. If we go inside the workshop, we can see that I have a nice big open space. Inside it's about 39 by 59. Yesterday I assembled a 24-foot long workbench down this side. I deliberately moved it about 5 feet away from the wall because I want to be able to walk all the way around it, access it from both sides. It does mean that I will end up with a power cord across the floor, but I will just put a mat over it so it doesn't become a tripping hazard. The task for this afternoon is to build some window jambs. I've got 2 sheets of 3/4 inch MDF, the first of which is already on sawhorses, ready to start cutting it. I was hoping to have my new table saw, but that's not going to be here for a couple of more days, so I'm going to just use the old one, the small one. I do have a very nice saw stop table saw on order, and once I finish tripping over my chop saw, that will be assembled in this corner. I plan on making another video when that comes, but for the meantime, let's just get on with the window jambs and trimming everything out. So I'm going to turn the camera off and I'll be right back. Don't go away. Well, I have 3 of the window jambs installed. These 2 over here and the first one at the end. And I have all the parts cut for 4 more here. I'm making it out of 3/4 inch MDF, which I find is a pretty good material for window jambs. And in the case of a 5x3 window or 60 by 36, the actual sizes you need are 35.5 on the horizontal and 58 on the verticals. And then whatever depth that is to get it out flush with the wall. I haven't got quite as far as I thought I was going to be by now, mainly because my table saw arrived this morning and I spent some time starting to set that up until I realized that it's far too heavy for me to stand up by myself. So I have to wait until I can find someone to help me stand it up. Also, I miscalculated the amount of materials I needed, so I had to go back to Lowe's to get another sheet. But now I have enough. So let me get one of these assembled and I'll show you how to install it. Assembly of the window jamb is pretty straightforward. I lay the 4 sides out on the workbench. A bead of yellow carpenter's glue at both ends. Stand it up. And now I'm going to use an air-powered trim nailer to put 3 2-inch number 16 nails in each corner. And that will hold it while the glue sets. Now that I've put all 4 corners together, I'm going to offer it up into the window and see what I need in the way of shims. So let me do that and I'll be right back. Well, here is the jamb temporarily installed in the window. In this particular case, I needed 1/2 inch over this side and 9/16 over the other side. And that gives me a nice even reveal on these 3 sides. So it will do once I hold it in the right place. You just eyeball it sideways so that both sides are the same. And it's even around all 3 of those sides. The bottom one will be significantly taller, so don't use that for measuring. Anyway, now that I'm happy with that fit, I'm going to take it out and put the glue on it and then put it back into place. Let me do that quickly and I'll be right back. Well, the glue I'm using is DAP Painter's Caulk. Any brand works, and it doesn't matter whether it's white or clear. Normally I buy white, but I just had some clear left over from a previous job. It's not going to be visible anyway. And I just put a continuous bead all the way around the edge, all four sides. And now I'm going to lift it up and push it into place. Before I do that, here's the shims I used. Yes, I could have bought door shims, but I already had loads of offcuts of plywood, masonite, and all sorts of stuff of various thicknesses. So I'm just using up that. Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to nail it while I'm holding the camera because I need both hands. But I've now put it in place, just eyeball it into the center so that reveal that side and that side are the same. And then push it all the way back to the window so it sits nice and flush. And then I'm going to put a few nails in the bottom. I typically go with 3 pairs, 1, 2, 3. And then I'll do the same on both sides and on the top. Don't need quite as many nails on the top and the sides. That's just to hold it straight. And once I've done that, I'll show you how I straighten it. So don't go away, I'll check in with you in a minute. Well, I've just nailed it around the top and the sides. I typically put 1 nail per foot of height along each side, and then just 2 at the top. Now take the longest straight edge you have that will fit, and just make sure that it fits with no gap. I can see that this is poking out a little bit too far, so I just tap it with a hammer. Not quite perfect yet. Try to do it left-handed while I hold the camera. Hope I'm not making you seasick. But now there's absolutely no gap between the level and the wood. Actually, there's a bit of a gap at the bottom. That one is in too far, so I'll just put a pry bar in behind it and pull it out slightly. I suspect I pulled that out too far. Again, it's a control issue, trying to do it with one hand. Yeah, it's too far, so I can just tap it in part way. So I'm basically just using the nails as spacers, and that is just about perfect. While I was waiting for the compressor to stop, I did the top using a 2-foot level, so now I'm just going to turn the camera off and fix this side, and then that jam is finished. Well, yesterday I installed window jambs in most of my workshop windows. Today I'm trimming them out, and I'm using 1x4 pine. First step is to cut 2 verticals that are 1/4 of an inch longer than the inside dimensions of the jamb. So you run them long, 1/8 of an inch at both ends, set back 1/8 of an inch as well. And then measure the outside to outside and add 1 inch for the top and bottom. And then that just goes like that. By having it 1 inch long, it sticks out 1/2 an inch on both sides. So just eyeball it. It looks a lot better than trying to make it flush and risking getting it not quite right. This is a good way of hiding any minor errors. And then I'm using the same trim nails, 2 rows, 1 into the edge of the jamb. And I haven't put the outer row in yet. I want to get the top and bottom pieces on so I can line the corners up. I've put all the nails in on the top and bottom pieces, but as I told you earlier, I've left the outside row out on the sides for now. Windows are never all exactly the same, even when they should be. And sometimes you'll find places where they stick out too far. Like here, for example. So then we just put a flat bar behind it and pull it out, and then nail it with the flat bar in so that it's flush.
and then that can be filled with painter's caulk. Whereas if I were to nail it hard against the wall, it would look bad at that point. And before you ask why I don't get it exactly right, as I said, everyone is different, and if it's too narrow, then you end up with a problem here, and it just doesn't go together neatly at all. So better to be too deep than not deep enough. Well, I've now trimmed out 7 windows and 1 of the doors, which is all the jambs that I've done. The last step is to go around with the caulk gun and fill those gaps down the side. Since I'm not going to be painting it, I need to make sure that I use white caulk. If I was going to paint it, it wouldn't matter. Of course, if it was inside my house, I'd be caulking every little imperfection, but I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to do the sides where they're plainly visible at eye level, just to give it a neat appearance. And you could ask why I even bothered to trim out the windows at all. My first thought was I wasn't going to, but I decided I needed the trim to frame the French cleat system that I'm going to put up. It will stop stuff getting knocked off the end. So I've now caulked the edges of all the windows. So a few moments ago there was a big visible gap there. Now you'd never know that it wasn't perfect. I'm not going to do the other 3 windows just yet because I want to use my new table saw for the jambs. I got the saw assembled yesterday, but I'm still working on the side sliding table for the cross cutting, and I still have an outfeed table to build. Today I want to start on a French cleat system for the walls of this workshop. Ultimately I'm going to go pretty much all the way around, but for the time being I'm just going to do a couple of panels just to get the hang of it. I started off by ripping up 2 sheets of plywood on the table saw. Each of these strips is 3.5 inches wide, which means I get 13 out of a sheet. And every video I have ever watched with people making French cleats, they've always talked about starting off with a wide strip and doing the 45-degree cut down the middle, calculating the middle and everything. That's something I just figured you don't need to do, because they always want to cut off the top 1/8 of an inch so that it's not a sharp edge, and also so that sawdust getting caught in there doesn't cause a problem. So by cutting it straight and then turn the saw blade on its edge and cutting the corner off, it's 2 cuts per piece instead of 2.5. So it's actually less work, and the amount of wood that I'm cutting off is not enough to make a difference of getting an extra piece out of 1 sheet of plywood. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Well, since this is my first French cleat system, I really don't know what the optimum spacing is between the cleats. So I decided to just put them on at a height that would miss the wall outlets. So I've got 5.5 inches between them, giving a 9-inch pitch. So I cut some spacer blocks out of scrap MDF. Of course, the windows are too far apart to be able to do it in 1 strip. I've got to cut it and piece it, just making sure I join it at the wall studs. Other cleat systems that I've seen people use have the strips closer together than this, but most people seem to be trying to maximize the wall usage. I have plenty of space, so I don't think I need to get them any closer. All that's going to do is just waste wood. I made sure I got the first one absolutely perfectly aligned, perfectly level, and it should be fairly quick from now on. I don't have all the screws in yet, it's just tacked. I will come back later once I've got everything up. Well, going up the wall is very easy to get the spacing right, just with a few blocks of wood. Coming down the wall needs a slightly different approach. I have 2 blocks of wood on a strip, and the space between the blocks needs to be 1 space plus 2 cleats. So in this case, 12.5 inches. And then I can just hang that in place, giving me both hands to work with. Well, that is as far as I'm going to go, at least for now. I think 6 rows ought to be enough. I get 3 rows out of 4 lengths of plywood with a few pieces left over, which I will use for the hanging cleats. Well, what I've got to do now is put the rest of the screws in. I'm using 2-inch drywall screws, which puts them about 3/4 of an inch into the stud, and I'm putting 2 per stud on each cleat. I think that should be enough. Well, that is 2 panels finished. I'm not going to do any more today. My hand is starting to hurt from pushing the screwdriver in so hard. It's also 6 o'clock, so it's a good time to go in, feed Zeus. So I'll continue, do 1 more panel tomorrow, and then start hanging stuff on it. So don't go away, I'll be right back. Well, that is 3 panels completed. That's all I'm going to do for now. Originally, I wanted to actually get some stuff hung on the walls today, but that didn't happen. I got back from my church meetings this afternoon and I was just so exhausted. Didn't sleep too well last night. Took a nap this afternoon, and that was longer than I thought it was going to be. So I'm just going to go in now, and I will check in with you again later. I'm not sure it's going to be tomorrow. I have to get everything ready for a trip, so I might not continue this until I get back from that. But don't go away, I will keep you posted. Well, I have been getting along with the French cleats. I've done 4 rows in this corner. Still got 2 more rows to go, but I ran out of wood and I had to make some more. Here's the next batch of strips. Some of the first things that I hung on them are my clamps. And while I was at it, I decided to build an extra one of these, one more than I needed, so I can take inventory of how many clamps of each size that I have. And today I went and spent a lot more money at Harbour Freight and bought another large collection of clamps. I also found one intermediate length that I don't have, or didn't have until this morning. So let me get the clamps out, put them on the wall, and I'll take another picture then. Well, there are my new clamps hung on the wall. I'm going to build another smaller cleat to hold the 6 3-foot clamps. Put those on their own, and then the 2-footers can go on the bottom level instead of the next one up. I'm going to buy a few more of the small ones because you can never have too many of those. I'm also going to move everything off this wall because I have decided that I want to use the bottom cleat in these 2 bays to build workbenches against the wall. This one is going to be the station with my drill press, and the other one I'm going to put the bench vise and a bench sander. Those will be narrow benches along this wall, and there'll still be plenty of room to walk behind this one. I might move it out just a few more inches. I haven't decided yet, but I have to build the benches along the outer wall before I'll know. Next thing to do is to separate those 3-foot clamps and move everything into this bay over here. Well, there are those 2 workbenches framed up. I can't add the tops today because I don't have any MDF. I've got that arriving tomorrow. And I also ran out of 2x4s, so I can't build the bottom shelf yet either. But I'll be able to finish them tomorrow. And structurally, they are very strong. They are hung off the bottom row of French cleats. And I've also put in a few screws. I've got screws about every other stud just to stop it moving. They're not needed to hold it up. The French cleats will do that perfectly well. Before I call it a day, I'm going to put a thin strip along the top of those cleats just to cover that gap at the back. That way I'm not going to lose anything down there. Well, I haven't made any recordings for a few days now, but I have been getting on quite well. I've got all the French cleats on the wall, all the way around the workshop. I finished that this morning.
I've also got quite a lot of stuff hung on the walls already. I haven't hooked up the sink yet. Still got a lot of mess. But I think a couple more days and I should be ready to get on with the next railroad build. I've still got a lot more tool holders I want to build. I want to get all the tools on the wall. Well, this is all I'm going to do for now. I have got the majority of my tools on hangers on the wall, and I've done a partial cleanup. I haven't bothered sweeping the floor, but it's clean enough to continue and to start with a paying project now. All this stuff on this bench is stuff that I haven't figured out how to hang on the wall yet, or just haven't got round to. Anyway, the landscaping is coming along outside. You can probably hear the tractors scraping the ground, grading it properly. The only big job that I haven't yet finished is the sink in the corner. I still don't have the right parts, even though I've been to Lowe's twice. But I will get that done next time I'm there, because I know exactly what I need now. Mechanically, it's done, and everything's hooked up from the well. I got rid of the old well cover because it was falling to pieces, and I built a new one. So I guess as far as improving the inside of the shop, that is a wrap for now. There's the new well cover. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you with the next railroad build video. Bye for now.